My son sold my house for 1.5. Without my permission, and handed me a check for $15,000. But my name is Samuel. I'm 68 years old and spent my life as a structural engineer in Chicago. Never thought I'd be standing in my son's office watching him slide a check for $15,000 across his expensive desk. "Go buy yourself a room in some dump outside the city," he said with cold eyes I barely recognized. The house I'd lived in for 40 years, where I raised him where his mother took her last breath. He'd sold it for $1.5 million without my permission. I should have been outraged, devastated. Instead, I smiled. Marcus had no idea what I had done. Before I tell you exactly how I handled this situation, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you believe greed can blind even the smartest people to what's right in front of them. I still remember the day Elizabeth and I bought our Victorian home back in 1983. We were young in love and terrified about spending $85,000, which seemed like all the money in the world to us then. The real estate agent kept apologizing for the creaky floors and outdated kitchen, but all we saw was potential. The ornate woodwork, the stained glass window on the landing, that massive oak tree in the backyard. We fell in love immediately. The neighborhood wasn't as fashionable back then. Our friends thought we were crazy moving to that part of Chicago, but Elizabeth had an eye for emerging areas. "In 20 years, everyone will wish they'd bought here," she said. As usual, my wife was right. We moved in with hardly any furniture. Just a mattress, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs, and Elizabeth's grandmother's rocking chair. Those first few weeks, we'd sit on the floor of the empty living room, eating takeout and planning our future. We'd have 2 children, we decided. Maybe a dog. We'd host Thanksgiving dinners and summer barbecues. The house would be filled with laughter and love. Over the years, we restored that house room by room. I learned carpentry from library books and YouTube videos before YouTube was even a thing. Rebuilt the back porch myself during a sweltering summer while Elizabeth was pregnant with Marcus. Installed crown molding in the dining room as a surprise for our 10th anniversary. Every corner of that house contained my sweat and our dreams. When Marcus was born in 1982, we converted the small bedroom next to ours into a nursery. I painted clouds on the ceiling while Elizabeth folded tiny clothes into the dresser we'd found at a flea market. 4 years later, when Lily came along, we moved Marcus to the larger bedroom upstairs and started the nursery process all over again. Those walls witnessed our children's first steps, first words, first heartbreaks. The height chart penciled on the kitchen door frame documented their growth. The dent in the hallway wall remained from when 12-year-old Marcus crashed his remote control car. The slightly off-center chandelier in the dining room was the result of my amateur electrical work, which Elizabeth never let me forget. As property values climbed, we occasionally discussed selling. Could have made a tidy profit in the late 90s, even more in the early 2000s. But it was never seriously considered. "This isn't an investment property," Elizabeth would say. "This is our home." When Elizabeth was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2007, that house became our sanctuary. I converted the sunroom into a peaceful retreat where she could rest during chemo treatments. The garden she'd cultivated for 25 years became her therapy. Even on her worst days, she'd insist on sitting by the window watching the birds at the feeder she'd installed. After she passed in 2011, friends and family urged me to sell. The house was too big for one person, they said. Too many memories, too much maintenance. But how could I leave Elizabeth was everywhere, in the kitchen, where she danced while cooking Sunday dinners, in the garden where her beloved roses still bloomed in the subtle scent of her perfume that somehow lingered in our bedroom closet years after she was gone. So I stayed even as developers started circling. The neighborhood had become one of Chicago's most desirable, just as Elizabeth predicted. First came polite letters offering market value, then more aggressive phone calls. One persistent realtor even showed up at my door monthly with increasing offers. "You're sitting on a gold mine, Mr. Reynolds," he'd say as if I didn't know. As if that mattered. What these people failed to understand was that I wasn't interested in the market value of bricks and hardwood floors. How do you put a price tag on the corner of the living room where we placed the Christmas tree for 40 years, or the backyard patio where I taught both my children to ride bikes, or the kitchen island where Elizabeth and I would drink coffee every morning planning our day? Some things simply aren't for sale. As I aged, maintaining the house became more challenging, but also more important. Tending Elizabeth's garden connected me to her. Fixing the leaky faucet she always complained about felt like honoring a promise. My retirement income was modest but sufficient. I had everything I needed: my books, my memories, my home. When realtors or investors would comment that I was wasting an asset, I'd simply say, "This isn't an asset. It's where my wife still lives." They rarely knew how to respond to that. Marcus was always different from his sister. Even as a small child, he had an awareness of status and possession that puzzled Elizabeth and me. While other kids wanted toys for Christmas, 8-year-old Marcus asked for a savings account. By 13, he was comparing our home to his friends' houses, noting square footage and property values. We attributed this to natural curiosity, maybe even aptitude. "He'll make a wonderful businessman someday," Elizabeth would say, though sometimes with a slight furrow in her brow. After college, Marcus went straight into real estate. It suited him. The competitive nature, the tangible rewards, the status. He climbed quickly from assistant to agent to broker, eventually opening his own firm, specializing in luxury properties. I was proud of his success, but sometimes worried about the person he was becoming. His conversations grew increasingly transactional, his friendships strategic. Everything seemed to have a price tag. His marriage to Veronica accelerated these changes. She came from considerable wealth, old Chicago money with the right connections. Their wedding was featured in local magazines, a far cry from the backyard ceremony Elizabeth and I had planned for them. Soon after, Marcus began suggesting I upgrade various aspects of my life: my car, my clothes, my living situation. "Dad, you're living like it's still 1990, he'd say during his increasingly rare visits. "That tweed jacket is older than my marriage." He'd look around the house with barely concealed disdain, noting the dated kitchen appliances and worn furniture. Never mind that these things were comfortable, functional, and filled with memories. The first serious conversation about selling the house came after Elizabeth had been gone about 5 years. Marcus arrived unannounced one Sunday, armed with property listings and market analysis. "Dad, this neighborhood has exploded. Your house could easily fetch over $1 million now," he said, spreading papers across the kitchen table where I'd been enjoying my morning crossword. "That's nice," I replied, continuing my puzzle. "Nice, it's incredible. Do you understand what that kind of money could do for you?" "For all of us." I set down my pen. "I don't need that kind of money, Marcus. I have everything I want right here." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Nobody has everything they want. That's not how life works. "Maybe not your life," I said quietly. That conversation ended badly, as did similar ones that followed. Marcus couldn't understand my attachment to the house, and I couldn't understand his obsession with liquidating it. The tension between us grew. Sometimes months would pass without contact, something that would have broken Elizabeth's heart. After Marcus married Veronica, the pressure intensified. She never visited the house, always had an excuse when family gatherings were planned. Marcus would come alone, if at all, often bringing renewed arguments about my unreasonable attachment to a depreciating asset. "The structure is aging, Dad," he'd say, as if I hadn't maintained it meticulously. "You're one major repair away from financial disaster." What he didn't know was that I'd been putting away small amounts for years, specifically for house maintenance. Elizabeth had insisted on it. "This old girl will need care in her golden years, just like we will," she'd say, patting the wall affectionately. About 6 months ago, things came to a head. Marcus arrived with a real estate agent, without warning. I returned from grocery shopping to find them walking through my living room, discussing crown molding and period features. "What's happening here?" I demanded, grocery bags still in hand. Marcus had the decency to look embarrassed, though the agent smiled broadly. "Your son was just giving me a preliminary tour. This property has tremendous potential." I asked the agent to leave, which she did reluctantly. Then Marcus and I had the worst argument of our lives. "You're sitting on a gold mine and refusing to cash in out of pure stubbornness," he shouted. "This is my home, not a commodity to be traded," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's an appreciating asset that you're selfishly hoarding. Mom would want you to be practical." That crossed a line. "Don't you dare presume to know what your mother would want," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. She loved this house. She died in this house. She's still in this house. Marcus rolled his eyes. "That's exactly the kind of irrational thinking I'm talking about. She's gone, Dad, and you're using her memory as an excuse to avoid moving forward." After he left, I sat in Elizabeth's garden for hours, wondering where we'd gone wrong with our son. How had he become someone who saw dollar signs where family memories should be? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? If Marcus was becoming increasingly alien to me, my relationship with Lily remained my anchor. Despite living in Denver with her husband, David, and their 2 children, Lily maintained a close connection that transcended distance. Where Marcus saw an outdated house in a valuable neighborhood, Lily saw the home where she'd grown up, filled with treasured memories. Our Sunday phone calls were a ritual neither of us ever missed. We'd talk about her kindergarten class, her children's latest achievements, books we'd read, and occasionally carefully about Marcus. "He means well, Dad," she'd say, though her tone suggested limited conviction. "He just shows care differently than we do." "By trying to evict me from my home," I'd respond dryly. Unlike her brother, Lily had no interest in the financial value of the house. Her concerns were practical and loving. Was I eating properly? Had I had my annual checkup? Was I staying active and engaged? When she visited, which was as often as her teacher's schedule and family budget allowed, she'd help with small repairs and organize areas that had become cluttered. "You know, Dad, there's always room for you with us in Denver," she offered regularly. "The kids would love having Grandpa around full-time." I appreciated the sincerity of her offer. Unlike Marcus's suggestions of senior apartments or retirement communities, Lily's invitation came from a place of genuine desire for my company. Still, I wasn't ready to leave Chicago, to leave Elizabeth. "Maybe someday," I'd tell her, "but not yet." During her last visit 3 months ago, Lily had helped me organize my important papers. We spent a rainy afternoon sorting through financial documents, insurance policies, and the various legal paperwork that accumulates over a lifetime. "Dad, when was the last time you updated your will and power of attorney?" she asked, holding up a yellowed document. I had to admit it had been years, probably not since Elizabeth's illness, when we'd both updated everything. Lily frowned. This names both Mum and Marcus as your powers of attorney. Mum's obviously, and Marcus. She trailed off, not wanting to speak ill of her brother. Marcus isn't exactly prioritizing my best interests these days. I finished for her. She nodded reluctantly. It might be time to revisit these, just to be safe. We had a long, difficult conversation that afternoon about aging autonomy and the potential for exploitation. Lily mentioned stories she'd heard through friends. Elderly parents pressured into financial decisions, outdated legal documents used inappropriately, family homes sold without proper consent. I assured her I was still sharp and capable, but the worry in her eyes lingered. Before she left to return to Denver, Lily extracted a promise from me to consult an elder law attorney. Just for a review, she insisted. Peace of mind for both of us. I agreed more to ease her concern than from any real sense of urgency. Looking back, I thank God every day for my daughter's foresight and persistence. When Marcus's pressure about selling the house intensified, I finally called Lily's friend Janet, an attorney specializing in elder issues. What began as a routine consultation quickly evolved into something more serious as I shared details of Marcus's behavior. Mr. Reynolds, I'm concerned about what you're describing, Janet said carefully. These sound like early warning signs of potential financial exploitation. I bristled at the term. Marcus is misguided, not criminal. Janet's expression remained neutral. Many cases I see begin with family members who believe they know what's best. The problem arises when they decide to act without consent. She recommended several precautionary measures, updating my will, revoking old powers of attorney, documenting Marcus's statements and actions. Not because you expect the worst, she explained, but because it's easier to prevent problems than fix them afterward. I followed her advice reluctantly, feeling somehow disloyal to Marcus, despite his behavior. Still, when Lily called the following week, I could honestly tell her I'd taken steps to protect myself. I'm so relieved, Dad, she said, the worry in her voice noticeably diminished. I know it probably feels unnecessary, but better safe than sorry. Your brother would never actually do anything without my permission. I assured her, believing it even as I said it. He may be persistent, but he's still your mother's son. The silence on the phone told me Lily wasn't so confident. As it turned out, she was right to worry. Spring arrived early in Chicago this year. By mid-March, Elizabeth's tulips were already pushing through the soil in the garden. I'd been feeling cooped up after the long winter and mentioned to Lily during our Sunday call that I was considering a visit to Denver. Really? Dad, that would be wonderful, she exclaimed. The kids would be thrilled, and the weather here is gorgeous right now. When were you thinking of coming? Before I knew it, we'd planned a 2-week visit beginning in early April. I hadn't taken a real trip since Elizabeth died, always finding reasons to stay close to home. But something about the changing season made me feel ready for a change, too. When I mentioned my travel plans to Marcus during one of our infrequent phone conversations, his response surprised me. That's a great idea, Dad, he said with unusual enthusiasm. You deserve a break. Don't worry about the house. I'll check on it while you're gone. His sudden supportiveness should have raised suspicions, but I was simply pleased by the positive interaction. Perhaps the distance had given him perspective. Thanks, son. Just collect the mail and maybe water your mother's garden if it doesn't rain. Of course, he assured me. I'll take care of everything. You just enjoy your time with Lily and the kids. The 2 weeks in Denver were transformative. Lily and David lived in a modest 3-bedroom home in a family-friendly suburb. My grandchildren, Emma and Jack, were 8 and 6, full of energy and curiosity. They showed me their school, their favorite park, their secret hideouts in the backyard. We went hiking in the nearby foothills, visited the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and spent evenings playing board games as a family. Being around young children again brought a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Their laughter, their endless questions, their uncomplicated affection. It was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. "You seem happier, Dad," Lily observed one evening as we sat on their back deck watching the sunset paint the distant mountains. "I am," I admitted. I hadn't realized how quiet my life had become. "You know the offer to move here permanently still stands," she said cautiously. "We could convert the basement into a private apartment for you. The kids would love having you around." For the first time, I didn't immediately dismiss the idea. "Let me think about it," I said. During my second week there, I began having trouble reaching Marcus. My calls went straight to voicemail, and my texts received delayed brief responses. When I finally did reach him, he sounded distracted. "Everything okay at the house?" I asked. "All fine, Dad. Just swamped with work. Big listing about to close." "Remember to water Mom's garden," I reminded him. "Already done. Listen, I've got to run to a meeting. Enjoy Denver." I tried to ignore the uneasiness his abruptness triggered. After all, real estate could be demanding with unpredictable hours. Still, something felt off. By the end of the second week, I found myself missing home, missing Elizabeth, and decided to return a few days earlier than planned. "Are you sure, Dad?" Lily asked, concerned. "You were supposed to stay through the weekend." "I've had a wonderful time," I assured her, "but I think I'm ready to get back to my own space." I decided not to tell Marcus about my change in plans, partly because he seemed so busy, but also because of a growing instinct that something wasn't right. I took an early morning flight back to Chicago and caught a taxi from O'Hare to my neighborhood. As the cab turned onto my street, I noticed unusual activity around my house. A large moving truck was parked in the driveway, and several people were carrying furniture out the front door. "Stop here," I told the driver abruptly about half a block away. I paid quickly, grabbed my suitcase and approached on foot, confusion turning rapidly to alarm. A young couple stood on my porch, directing movers about which items to take and which to leave. A woman I didn't recognize was measuring windows. "Excuse me," I said, walking up the path to my own front door. "What's happening here?" The couple turned, surprised. The woman spoke first. "Oh, are you from the Historical Society? We were told you might be stopping by to document the original features." "No," I said slowly, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. "I'm Samuel Reynolds. This is my home." Their expressions shifted from welcoming to confused. The man stepped forward. "There must be some mistake. We purchased this house last week. We're the new owners." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "That's not possible. I never sold my house." An uncomfortable silence followed. The woman glanced at her husband before speaking gently, as if to a confused elderly person. "Mr. Reynolds, we have all the proper documentation. The sale closed 3 days ago. We paid $1.5 million. "To whom?" I demanded, though I already knew the answer. "To your son, Marcus Reynolds. He had power of attorney and handled the entire transaction." I stood there, suitcase still in hand, as strangers continued to dismantle my life and carry it piece by piece into a moving truck. Elizabeth's garden already showing signs of neglect after just 2 weeks. Our bedroom, where she'd taken her last breath. The kitchen, where we'd danced on our 40th anniversary. All of it sold without my knowledge or consent. "I need to make a call," I said numbly, walking back down the path away from what was apparently no longer my home. I went straight to Marcus's office in downtown Chicago, fury and disbelief fighting for dominance. His receptionist tried to stop me, saying he was in a meeting, but I walked past her without slowing. "It's all right, Stephanie," Marcus called from behind his desk as I pushed open his door. "I've been expecting my father." The casual confidence in his voice only fueled my anger. His office spoke of his success: leather furniture, abstract art on the walls, views of the Chicago skyline. He sat behind an enormous desk of polished mahogany, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "You sold my house," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, given the turmoil inside. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "I did what needed to be done. You're nearly 70, Dad. Living alone in that oversized, outdated house was impractical and unsafe. That wasn't your decision to make." He leaned back in his chair. "Actually, legally it was. The power of attorney you signed gave me that authority. That document was from when your mother was sick, over a decade ago. It was never revoked," he said simply. "It's still valid." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain control. "Marcus, you sold my home without my knowledge while I was visiting your sister. How can you possibly justify that?" "I'm protecting your interests, Dad. That house was a money pit, and you were too emotionally attached to see it objectively. The neighborhood has completely gentrified. It was worth far more than you realized." "I knew exactly what it was worth," I said quietly, "and I chose to keep it anyway." Marcus sighed as if dealing with a stubborn child. "That's exactly the problem. Your sentimentality was costing this family a significant asset. Mom's been gone for 12 years, Dad. It's time to move forward. By making me homeless." He actually rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic. You're not homeless. I've set aside money for you to get a nice senior apartment." "How generous," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "And how much would that be?" Marcus reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a check, sliding it across the polished surface toward me. $15,000. More than enough for deposits and several months' rent somewhere suitable. I stared at the check, then back at my son. $15,000 from a $1.5 million sale. "The house needed significant work before closing," he said smoothly. "And there were the real estate commissions, of course. Which went to you." He didn't deny it. "I handled the entire transaction, and I've already used a portion of the proceeds as a down payment on a new property for Veronica and me. We found a beautiful place in Lincoln Park, 5 bedrooms completely renovated." The pieces clicked into place. "So you sold my home to buy yourself a bigger one." "I made a sound financial decision for all of us," he corrected. "The remaining funds are being invested in my business. They'll grow far more efficiently there than sitting in bricks and mortar on your street." I picked up the check, examining the insulting sum. $15,000 for 40 years of memories. "Memories don't pay bills, Dad." He gestured dismissively toward the check. "That's more than fair. Go buy yourself a room in some dump outside the city if you're going to be ungrateful." In that moment, looking at the stranger my son had become, I should have been devastated. Instead, a calm certainty washed over me. I smiled, which clearly wasn't the reaction Marcus expected. "What?" he asked, suddenly wary. "You have no idea what I've done, do you?" I said quietly. My suspicions about Marcus hadn't developed overnight. They had grown slowly, painfully, as I watched my son transform from a merely ambitious young man into someone who viewed family relationships as transactions. The final warning came during that last major argument 6 months ago, when he'd brought a realtor into my home without permission. After he left that day, I made 2 important calls. The first was to my old friend Richard, who had practiced law for 40 years before retiring. The second was to Lily. "I need some legal advice, Rich," I explained after we'd caught up. "Hypothetically speaking, what stops an adult child from selling an elderly parent's home using an outdated power of attorney?" There was a pause on the line. "Sam, is Marcus giving you trouble about the house again?" "Hypothetically," I repeated. Richard's sigh conveyed decades of legal experience with family disputes. A power of attorney can be revoked at any time by the principal. That's you. I'd strongly advise creating new estate planning documents immediately. And Sam, don't do this alone. Get proper legal counsel. Following that conversation, I met with Janet, the elder law specialist Lily had recommended. What began as a consultation quickly developed into a comprehensive legal strategy. "The first step is revoking the old power of attorney," Janet explained during our initial meeting. "Then we'll create new documents naming someone you fully trust." "My daughter Lily," I said without hesitation. "Good. Next, we need to protect the house itself. Given what you've told me about your son's behavior, I'd recommend placing it in an irrevocable trust." Over the next few weeks, Janet helped me create a legal fortress around my home and assets. The outdated power of attorney naming Marcus was formally revoked with notifications sent to all relevant financial institutions. A new power of attorney named Lily as my representative. Most importantly, the house was transferred into the Elizabeth Reynolds Memorial Trust, with stringent conditions for any potential sale. I also documented every conversation with Marcus about the house, creating a record of his increasing pressure and disregard for my wishes. Janet advised me to inform my neighbors about the situation as well. "If anyone sees unusual activity at the house when you're away, we want them to contact you immediately," she explained. Looking back, these precautions seemed almost paranoid. I kept telling myself Marcus might be pushy and materialistic, but he wouldn't actually sell my home without permission. I was protecting myself from a worst-case scenario that would never happen. Then it did. Standing in Marcus's office holding that insulting $15,000 check, I watched realization slowly dawn on his face as I explained exactly what I'd done. "The power of attorney you used was legally revoked 4 months ago," I said calmly. "Notifications were sent to all my financial institutions, including my mortgage company." Marcus's confidence faltered slightly. "I never received any notification. It was sent by certified mail to your office. Someone signed for it." I paused. "I also executed a new power of attorney naming Lily, not you." "That doesn't matter," he said, though less certainly. "The sale is already complete. The documents are filed. Documents that will now be evidence in a fraud investigation." I continued. "The house was transferred into a trust before you attempted to sell it. You had no legal right to conduct that transaction." The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing." From my pocket, I withdrew copies of the trust documents and the revocation notices, sliding them across his fancy desk, just as he had slid that check to me. "I've already spoken with the police, and my attorney is meeting with the buyers this afternoon to explain that they've purchased stolen property." "It wasn't stolen." Marcus stood abruptly. "I was acting in your best interest by stealing my home to buy yourself a bigger one." I shook my head. "That's not going to play well with the fraud investigators. Or with the real estate licensing board." For the first time, genuine fear flickered in my son's eyes. "Dad, let's be reasonable. We can undo the sale." "It's already being undone," I said. "But that doesn't erase what you tried to do." I was trying to help you, he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. That house was too much for you to manage alone. If you'd actually believed that you would have discussed options with me. Instead, you waited until I was out of town, used a revoked legal document, and tried to pocket over $1 million while leaving me with a pittance. Marcus sank back into his chair. What are you going to do? I've already done it, I replied. The fraud report has been filed. The sale is being reversed. The trust attorney is handling everything. You're pressing charges against your own son. His voice broke slightly. You sold your father's home without permission, I countered. Were we really still family to you? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at it, then back at me with widening eyes. It's the police department. I stood to leave. You should probably take that call. As I walked out, I heard him answering the phone. His voice uncharacteristically shaky. In the reception area, his assistant stared at me with undisguised curiosity. I nodded politely as I passed. Outside, standing on the busy Chicago sidewalk, I took my first deep breath in what felt like days. The magnitude of what had happened, and what I'd done in response, was still sinking in. My son had betrayed me in the most fundamental way, and I had responded not with helpless acceptance, but with decisive action. I pulled out my phone and called Lily. "Dad?" she answered immediately. "Did you confront Marcus? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I assured her. "It's done. Everything's in motion." "I still can't believe he actually went through with it," she said, her voice tight with anger. "When you called from the house and told me what he'd done." "I know." I sighed, watching the busy city traffic. I didn't want to believe it either. "Do you want me to come to Chicago? David can take some days off to watch the kids." "Not yet," I decided. "Let's see how things unfold first. The trust attorney thinks the sale can be unwound within a week. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown, meanwhile." "And Marcus?" I paused the image of my son's frightened face as he answered that phone call, still fresh in my mind. I think reality is just beginning to hit him. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone signaled an incoming call from Veronica Marcus's wife. I declined it. "Marcus's wife is calling me," I told Lily. "I'm not ready for that conversation." "Don't talk to either of them without your attorney present," Lily advised. "Marcus got himself into this mess. He's the one who committed fraud." The word still made me flinch. My own son, a fraudster. How had we arrived at this point? "I know you feel terrible about pressing charges," Lily said softly, reading my thoughts. "But Dad, he left you no choice. If you'd let this slide, who knows what he might have done next?" She was right, of course. The Marcus who could sell his father's home without permission was capable of other exploitation. Still, the knowledge brought no comfort. I never thought I'd have to legally protect myself from my own child. I said the words heavy with sadness. "Neither did I," Lily replied. "But here we are." Here we were indeed. Standing outside my son's office building, homeless for the moment, but not defeated. Not a victim, but a fighter. Elizabeth would have been proud of that, at least. The following weeks unfolded like scenes from someone else's life. The fraudulent sale was voided, but not without complications. The buyers, understandably upset, threatened litigation before ultimately accepting the reality that they'd purchased property from someone without legal authority to sell it. Marcus faced serious consequences. He was charged with elder financial exploitation and fraud. His real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Several clients withdrew their listings when news of the charges became public. The down payment he'd made on the Lincoln Park house was forfeited when he couldn't secure financing for the balance. Throughout this process, I maintained a strange emotional detachment. It was as if, by crossing this line, Marcus had temporarily ceased to be my son and become instead a case study in greed and entitlement. I attended legal proceedings, provided statements, and cooperated with investigators with a calm that surprised even me. Veronica called repeatedly before finally confronting me in person outside the courthouse after a hearing. "You're destroying our family," she accused, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. "Marcus was trying to help you. By stealing my house and giving me 1% of the proceeds," I asked mildly. "It wasn't stealing, he had power of attorney. A revoked one, used fraudulently." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to our reputation? Our friends are whispering about us. Marcus might lose his business. Actions have consequences." I said the same phrase I'd used countless times when Marcus was a child caught misbehaving. "He made his choices." "He's your son," she hissed. "Yes," I agreed sadly. "That's what makes this necessary." Lily flew in from Denver to support me through the court appearances and meetings with detectives. She stayed in my hotel room, accompanying me to appointments and helping arrange for the repair of damage done to the house during the brief period the buyers had occupied it. "The garden is salvageable," she assured me after we'd visited to assess the situation. They didn't have time to do much renovation, thankfully. On our third day together, as we shared breakfast in the hotel restaurant, Lily asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What happens with Marcus now, Dad?" I set down my coffee cup. "Legally, the prosecutor says they have a strong case. Practically speaking, it's my decision whether to push for the maximum penalties." "And what have you decided?" I sighed heavily. "I don't want my son in prison, Lily. But I also can't pretend this didn't happen." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Have you spoken to him at all?" "No. His attorney advised against direct contact, and frankly, I'm not sure what I would say." "He's called me," she admitted. "Twice now. He's different. Scared. Remorseful, I think. Or just sorry he got caught," I suggested. "Maybe," she acknowledged. "But maybe this is the wake-up call he needed. People can change when they hit rock bottom." I wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe the son I'd raised with love and values was still in there, somewhere beneath the veneer of materialism and entitlement. But wishing didn't make it so. "I've asked the prosecutor about a potential plea agreement," I finally said. "Reduced charges in exchange for full restitution community service and mandatory counseling. No prison time unless he violates probation." Lily's eyes widened. "You'd do that for him, after what he did." "I'm not doing it for him," I clarified. "I'm doing it for me, for your mother, for our family. Pursuing maximum charges won't undo the betrayal, but it might prevent any chance of reconciliation." "Do you think reconciliation is possible?" she asked quietly. I looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, thinking of the little boy who once sat on my shoulders at parades, the teenager who asked for my advice about college, the young man who'd walked proudly across the graduation stage and pointed to his mother and me in the audience. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I want to leave the door open even if just a crack." 2 days later, I met Marcus at the courthouse, our attorneys present. He looked diminished somehow, his usual confident posture replaced with a slump, dark circles under his eyes, his expensive suit slightly rumpled. "Dad," he said, his voice catching. "I don't know what to say." "Then listen," I replied. "I've asked the prosecutor to offer you a plea agreement. Reduced charges, no prison time, provided you make full restitution and comply with other conditions." Hope flickered in his eyes. "You'd do that?" "After what I did, I'm your father." I said simply. That hasn't changed even if our relationship has. His lawyer quickly intervened, explaining that accepting the deal would still mean a criminal record loss of his real estate license for at least 5 years and other significant consequences. Marcus listened, then looked back at me. Why? He asked. Because sending you to prison won't heal our family, but taking responsibility for your actions might begin the process. Tears welled in his eyes, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in years. I'm so sorry, Dad. I got so caught up in the money and impressing Veronica's family and building my business. I lost sight of everything that actually matters. Yes, I agreed. You did. Can you ever forgive me? I chose my words carefully. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. It begins with acknowledging the wrong, making amends where possible, and committing to change. You're at the very beginning of that journey. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. Do you? I challenged gently. Do you understand that trust once broken must be rebuilt brick by brick, that words mean nothing without actions behind them? I want to try, he said. I want to be the son you and Mum raised me to be. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a small softening in my heart. Not forgiveness yet, not reconciliation, but perhaps the seed from which those might eventually grow. Then accept the plea, I told him. Make restitution, get counseling, rebuild your life on better foundations, and maybe over time we can rebuild our relationship too. As we left the courthouse that day, I felt a strange mixture of grief and hope. The son I knew was gone, that relationship forever altered by his betrayal. But perhaps from the ashes of that relationship, something new might eventually emerge. Something based on honesty, respect, and the hard lessons of accountability. Time would tell, and for the first time in years, I felt I had plenty of that to spare. 6 months have passed since that day in Marcus's office when he handed me a $15,000 check and told me to buy a room in some dump outside the city. 6 months of legal proceedings, emotional reckonings, and slow steps toward healing. I'm back in my home now. The garden has recovered from its brief neglect. Elizabeth's roses blooming as if nothing had happened. Inside, everything is familiar, yet subtly different. I find myself appreciating small details I once took for granted, the way afternoon light filters through the stained glass window on the landing, the solid feel of the banister beneath my hand, the creak of that one floorboard near the kitchen that we never fixed. Marcus accepted the plea agreement. His real estate license was revoked, and he's halfway through 500 hours of community service at a homeless shelter. The irony isn't lost on any of us. Veronica filed for divorce when their financial situation collapsed, another casualty of his choices. He's living in a small apartment now, working an entry-level job at a friend's property management company, the only place that would hire him with his new criminal record. We've spoken several times, cautious conversations filled with careful words. He's in therapy trying to understand the values and priorities that led him so far astray. I want to believe the changes I see are genuine, but only time will prove that. Lily and her family visit more often now. We've established a new tradition of monthly video calls with the grandchildren who are fascinated by my stories about Chicago and their grandmother's garden. They'll be coming for 2 weeks this summer, their first extended stay in the house that holds so much family history. As for me, I've found purpose in an unexpected place. Janet, my elder law attorney, asked if I would speak to a support group for seniors who've experienced financial exploitation by family members. My first instinct was to decline. Who wants to publicly discuss such a painful topic? But then I thought about how alone I'd felt when this began, how I'd questioned whether I was overreacting to Marcus's behavior. So I agreed to one session, which led to another and another. Now I volunteer regularly with a senior advocacy organization helping others recognize warning signs I missed and take protective steps before crisis strikes. There's healing in using my experience to help others avoid similar pain. Last week, Marcus asked if he could stop by the house. It was his first visit since the fraudulent sale, and I felt a complex mix of emotions as I watched him walk up the front path. He paused at the steps, visibly emotional. "I didn't think I'd ever be welcome here again," he said when I opened the door. "I'm not sure welcome is the right word yet," I replied honestly. "But you can come in." We sat in the living room, the same space where he'd once brought a realtor without my permission. He looked around, taking in the familiar surroundings with new eyes. "I didn't appreciate what this place really means," he said quietly. "All I saw was the price tag. And now I understand why you fought so hard to keep it." He met my gaze directly. "It's not just a house. It's everything you and Mom built together." It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation moment like in movies. No tearful embraces or instant forgiveness. Just a small acknowledgement, a tiny step forward on a very long road. I've updated my will. The house will eventually be divided equally between Marcus and Lily, with provisions ensuring it can't be sold without mutual agreement. Not because I fully trust Marcus again. That will take years if it happens at all. But because I want to give him the opportunity to make better choices in the future. The greatest lesson in all of this has been about value. Not the market value of property or possessions, but the true worth of integrity, family bonds, and standing up for oneself. Money really can blind people to what matters most. It can transform loved ones into strangers and turn family relationships into business transactions. But only if we let it. Every evening now I sit in Elizabeth's garden as the sun sets. Sometimes I talk to her, telling her about our children, our grandchildren, the strange journey these past months have been. I like to think she would approve of how I handled things, protecting the home we built together while leaving the door open however slightly for our son's redemption. The true worth of a home isn't measured in dollars, but in the love and memories it contains. And sometimes protecting what's precious requires courage we didn't know we possessed. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you love or had to stand firm against family pressure, share your experience in the comments below. Like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. And remember your home, your boundaries, your self-respect. These are treasures worth defending, no matter who challenges them. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always recognize the true value of what you hold dear.